Welcome, everyone, to Beyond the Crucible, the podcast that dares to talk about setback and failure, but not so we can commiserate, so we can elevate. I'm Gary Schneeberger, the co-host of the show, and our mission today is to offer you the hope that your crucible experiences, those tragedies and challenges you've faced or are facing right now, do not define you. They refine you. They did not happen to you, they happened for you. And no one I know knows that better than the host of the show, the founder of Crucible Leadership, and my friend Warwick Fairfax. Warwick, welcome. This is going to be an enlightening and a different conversation than the kinds of subjects that we've talked about in the past.
Absolutely. Very much looking forward to it.
Our guest today, listener, is Ian Dibb. And this is his bio as he's written it. So it's almost like if you're a fan of the old TV show Dragnet, it's very just the facts, which is kind of great. Ian Dibb, age 46, founder and CEO of Keylu.com, married to Becky, stepfather to Jude, age 19, and father to Alice, age 9. They live in Cornwall with a house full of pets. They enjoy surfing, paddleboarding, and the beauty Cornwall has to offer. We have strong Christian faith, and the seeds from that were set by their own parents. Warwick, that's a brief look at who Ian is. Let's dive in a little deeper and so that people get to know a little bit more about him and what they can learn from him.
Well, Ian, thanks so much for being here, and welcome to Beyond the Crucible. And thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. It's great to talk.
Well, and just for folks outside of the UK, Cornwall is in the southwest tip of England. That little thing that kind of points out, sort of rocky, rugged, fascinating place where Ian lives. So before we get a bit into your Crucible story, just give us a bit of the background of Ian Dibb and some of the threads that make you who you are and maybe have led to what you do now, but tell us a bit of the backstory of you and your family and
Yeah, so I was born in Liverpool. We lived there. Mum was a GP. My dad worked for the British Medical Association. I had an older sister, Jane. I've got two younger sisters, Amy and Beth. And we moved down to Cornwall when we were 5. Beautiful place. As Warwick said, it's kind of the last place in England before you fall off. But it's a great place for me as a dad now. I mean, and this was my mum's reasoning for moving to Cornwall. It's a safe place. There's not much going on. It's quite sleepy. We're a 4-hour flight from London, which is incredible. But at the same point for me, it's been an absolute blessing. We moved down to Cornwall when we were 5, attended school, did the normal stuff, part of a family of 6. And it's just been a journey. I'm one of these guys who never really looks at the end destination. I enjoy the day to day. Believe we're very much on a journey, which none of us knows what's going to happen, but I just embrace it. And it's something I've always said to my family about it. I don't care what they become, but as long as they're better people and they leave this world a better place than they came into it. So that might be they become the next prime minister, or it might be they just become somebody who cares for people and makes a difference to their lives. So my background, went to university in Worcester, not too far from actually Warwick in the UK. After I left university, I decided I wanted to see the world. So I left and went through Thailand, Malaysia, ended up in New Zealand, living there for a while. And it was while I was in New Zealand, actually, my Crucible story really took effect.
Okay. Wow. Well, talk about that. That's a great lead in. So, so in New Zealand and so talk about what happened next.
Yeah. So I was living in New Zealand. It was amazing. It's such a beautiful place and a place I would have dearly liked to stay. And while I was traveling, my mum, Anne, was a GP and she was complaining about back pain for the best part of 12 months. but just put it down to some kind of pulled muscle. So I spoke to Mum daily. Would still love to speak to Mum daily. But while I was there, I received a phone call from Mum, and the message was, Ian, your sister's gone missing. And to most people, it wouldn't be that much of a big deal. But my sister Jane had been suffering from bipolar for the best part of 18 years. Numerous suicide attempts in her life. Every single one of them had failed, unfortunately. But this was a different occasion. So a week later, I got another phone call from Mum about 1:30 in the morning. And that could only mean one thing. And I got the call from Mum, and it said, Ian, we found your sister. And she had taken her own life. And it was devastating, absolutely devastating. As much as when one of your loved ones has bipolar, there was a high chance you might lose them. You never really think it's going to happen. So, yeah, I flew back from New Zealand back to the UK. I think it was the following day, and started the preparations for my sister's funeral. So I was 26 at the time. Jane was 28. And back in the UK for 2 weeks dealing with the funeral and also my sister just bought a house, so having to deal with that as well. Then my mum, eventually we went into hospital late one evening, and she was diagnosed with stage 4 terminal cancer. So that back pain actually turned out to be a grapefruit-sized tumor underneath her lung. And as a doctor, Mum knew exactly what that diagnosis meant. So yeah, it went from a family of 6 within a 2-year period to losing 2 of the most inspirational people I've ever met. And yeah, it was a point in your life where you either just let this wash over you and have a really let grief take hold of you and destroy you, or you actually say, well, if this has happened to me, how many other millions of people is this going to happen to? And why does it need to happen in the way it happened to me? What can be done to make a difference to these people's lives? So yeah, it was a dreadful time in my life, but off the back of that, it's given me a absolute mission to help other people who will eventually go through the same situation.
So talk a bit about, you mentioned, your mom and sister were inspiration. Just talk about who they were as people and why they had such a massive influence in your life.
So my mum, as I mentioned, was a GP, but she was just one of the funniest, most caring people I've ever known. Just super kind, super caring. And for me, I looked to Mum, and it was 5:30, and I'd be looking at the door waiting for her to come in. I would spend hours listening to her, just being with her. And Mum and Dad didn't have the best relationship, so I kind of always made sure Mum was okay. So from the day I left the university till the day she passed away, I probably either spoke to her or saw her every day. And my sister Jane didn't have it easy. So for 18 years, she suffered from bipolar. She was a teacher. She was an incredible teacher, and she would often put herself into really difficult situations or places to kind of challenge herself. And she didn't have an easy time, but she kept positive. They never lost their faith right till the end. And as a non-believer at the time, or somebody who had taken a step off the track, to see them go through what they did and maintain their faith and love was unbelievable. And that I've been blessed. We haven't had the easiest of life, but even to have, I think, the best part of 28 years with Mum and 26 years with Jane, it's not about how long you have, it's about the time you have with that person. So they are still the people that when things go well in my life or things go bad, I want to pick up the phone and speak to them. I can't anymore. But yeah, I was blessed for those years I did have them.
It sounds like they were just amazing people, even, just having bipolar, to be that caring of, your sister, of her students. It sounded like she didn't wallow in anger about what she had. She just got on with life and contributed. And I don't know, I'm not an expert in this, but that doesn't sound usual, is it, for people with bipolar to have that kind of just that giving and serving personality? And
yeah, I kind of think one of the telling things was at her funeral, and we had a big church, which is just 5 minutes down the road, and it seats that, I think it's 600-700 people, and there were at least as many people outside the church as there were in. And to me, when you look at that and you think, wow, what a difference that person made. So Jane inspired people. She had a difficult story, she had a difficult time. But when the bipolar wasn't taking effect, she was just full of this amazing energy, which shone from her. And to me, that inspires me. So some days I have, and they're brilliant, and everything's easy. And other days you wake up in the morning and it's more challenging. But if my sister with bipolar can get through that and shine and inspire people, then we all can. It's a choice you make.
Mm. I mean, that's so profound. We'll get to sort of a choice, because I think when we talked before, you had a choice that you had to make too when, your sort of beloved mom and sister passed away. And you mentioned your mom had a very strong faith. Just talk about that and the impact it had in your life. Because in some ways, she sounds like almost like a role model of a mother and a human being that just, a lot of people have difficult parents, but it sounds like you had about as good a mother as it's humanly possible to have. So just talk about her and her faith and the impact it had on your life.
Faith is one of the most interesting things that I couldn't understand why, when mum had been dealt with some of the toughest cards you can be, a daughter with bipolar, a failed marriage, your own terminal diagnosis, but yet to still smile and shine. That it just shows you actually that there's got to be something behind this. And I would continually, we had this kind of jokey relationship where mum says, look, Ian, I'm not concerned. He's going to get you. You will become a believer, And I was like, no, mum, that's never going to happen. It's not going to happen. And then one day, it was probably 5-6 years ago, that I attended an alpha course, walked into the alpha course, and instantly felt this peace flood over me like I hadn't felt for the best part of 10 years. It was incredible, this peace I felt. And I instantly felt a small section of what mum had been blessed with as a Christian her entire life. And one of the things mum had written in her Bible was, my children will find faith through their spouses. And my wife found God 2 years before me, and my wife was the one who got me onto the alpha course. And all of a sudden, all these things which I used to put down to the coincidence actually started making sense. And even when mum was on her final day, she said, Ian, you don't need to worry about me. I'm going to a better place. And she was completely at peace, completely at peace with where she was going. And I just remember on her final day, she was in the hospice. It's quite late at night, and I spent the evening with her. And she turned around and looked over her shoulder, and she said to me, Ian, I love you. And that was the last thing I've ever heard from mum. And it's the thing that sticks in my heart, that somebody who had been through so many difficulties had the strength to inspire, even at the very last minute.
I mean, that's just incredible. I mean, the Bible talks about the peace that passes understanding. I mean, it's certainly true that your mum had that, that sort of peace, which, she's a doctor. She knew exactly what was happening in great detail, but yet she was at peace because she, not only did she know where she's going, she was also convinced that her kids would also have a faith, which at the time, I'm guessing, may not have been that certain to you, when you were watching your mother in her dying moments, but yet she had this inner peace on both counts of where she was going and where you would be headed. And that's sort of an amazing level of faith that few of us have.
It was really strange. So on the day she passed away, I received a text message on my phone, and it was on my home phone, so it didn't actually come up with the person who'd sent it. And it was a message saying, turn your face to the sun and the shadows fall behind you. And it meant nothing to me until I went to mum's house an hour later. And on her bedroom door was a hand-drawn picture mum had drawn, and it said, turn your face to the sun, the shadows fall behind you. Mm. And it just instantly, I've still got that hand-drawn image in a box of my mum's stuff. But she never lost her faith. She said, Ian, look, just have peace because we will meet again. And I had a couple of occasions shortly after mum passed where she actually, I'm not sure whether this is a dream or whether it was just mum coming to me, but she was actually there and said, Ian, look, you don't need to grieve me. I'm in a better place. And off the back of that, it gives you peace of mind to know that she knew she was going to a better place, and the pain she suffered over the past 18 months of her diagnosis, she was looking forward to taking that burden off and just going to the next place.
Hmm. So how did you sort of get beyond that? Because listeners are probably going to be thinking, they had obviously Faith, your sister, Jane, and your mum, and you go through that, a lot of people would be pretty angry. A lot of people would say, maybe some people, quote unquote, could deserve to die sooner. Sometimes we humanly think so, but mum, no way. Not her.
Mm-hmm.
She's a saint. That makes no sense. I needed a few more decades with her, I don't want to,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how did you deal with what for most people would be sort of anger, frustration? How did you get beyond that? I mean, I'm assuming you felt that.
Horrifically. Losing Jane was tough because Jane was 28 and she was at the start of her life. She just bought a brand new house the week before she took her own life. And the pressure of that was too much. And unfortunately, in the way my sister took her life, there was no way back. Most of the time, she would find a way back from it. But so there was a part of me saying, if I was in the UK at the time, could I have helped? Would I have been there? So you've got that kind of survivor guilt to a certain level. And with mum, I would have given my own life for my mum in a heartbeat, in the same way as I would my daughter. You don't even need to ask me that question. I would be there. I'd put myself at switch instantly. So for a lot of time, there was a kind of an immediate anger, especially with God, to say, how can you let this happen? This is one of your best disciples, somebody who's loved you and worshipped you since the day they were born. But then there was a kind of off switch, which was a kind of numbness, which just takes over. So the grief goes, you go for a period of just existing. So you don't have the super highs, you don't have the super lows. You continue to progress. From the outside, everything looked rosy. My friends would have said he's the life and soul of the party, but inside I was just feeling almost empty. And then it really only changed when my daughter was born and she came into the world. I go, okay, I can't do this anymore. Now I'm a dad, and my job now is to give my daughter the safest, most loving environment I can, to know that I will do anything for her. And it changed everything. But there was still that underlying sadness, which probably lasted between 6 and 10 years. And it really only fully disappeared when I walked into the church on the Alpha course that evening. And it was like being jet washed with love. And it wasn't just from the pastor, it was just this peace I felt. And what's it probably now 6 years I've been a Christian. And don't get me wrong, it hasn't given me the easiest times in the world. I still have my challenges. I still have tough days. I have amazing days. But off the back of that Alpha course and my growing faith and my family's faith as well, I have a peace. And I like my sisters, unfortunately, aren't in the same place as me. They still take antidepressants quite a lot to get through this. I'm trying to get them to come on the Alpha course with me because I know it'll be incredible for them. But unfortunately, in the female side of our family, we have got this depressive gene. And my mum's mum had it. My mum had it to a certain level. Obviously, my sister Janie took her own life. And my younger sisters have the same kind of gene, which runs through the family. But I'm always the kind of guy who will try and bring lightness. I say that I'd like to be the lighthouse on the cliff, providing safety and somewhere these people can go to, and always there for them, in the same way as my mum always was.
You mentioned earlier just about choice, and one of the things we say on, Beyond the Crucible all the time is you go through a horrific tragedy like you did in the space of, what was it, like 18 months, losing a sister and a mum, beloved sister and mum. You could have been angry and bitter against God, against yourself. Gosh, if I'd only been in the UK and not New Zealand, maybe I could have saved my sister, which is unknowable. But the unknowable things are often the ones that torture you the most. You can't prove that it's wrong, that there's nothing you could have done. It's not like, I'm convinced I couldn't have. You can't prove that case. So because it's unknowable, that's the kind of thing that can haunt you. So, you had a choice in which one side would be for the rest of your life, the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years, to be angry at God and angry at yourself. And, gone to, I don't know, drugs, alcohol, or there's all sorts of manner of destructive behaviors. Mm-hmm. But you made a choice not to go there. And I would, part of it was your faith. So talk about just, because there are some folks that are listening today, maybe they've lost loved ones and they're angry at themselves and God. And What would you say to folks like that? I mean, what does it mean to make that choice? Talk about that choice and what that meant for you.
Yeah, there's a quote I love by Winston Churchill, which is, "If you're going through hell, keep going." So why would you stay in a place which is painful? And luckily, through my experience, I'm connected to some incredible people who've lost far more than I ever will. You know, these people have lost children and they've lost so much. And yet these are the people who say, well, I'm going to make a difference because I don't want anyone else to go through this. So I could have easily just sat back and let the grief swallow me, you know. And there was points when I'd wake up in the morning and think, well, what's this all about? You know, the sadness and emptiness I felt for a while was too much at times to really bear. And I actually thought to myself, well, why? I was 28 at the time. I'm 46 now. And the choice I made was I've had to go through this. So the toughest steel is made in the hottest fires. You know, we are given experiences to help others. And my experience of losing my sister and mum has given me this energy to do whatever it takes to help people. You know, and it was quite late one night. We received an email into the platform of somebody whose son had joined our website and had sadly passed away. And we took his mum through the process of dealing with the estate. And he'd left her a message. And that one message was, if that's all we ever achieved at Keylu, was enough, because it gave her peace of mind that she'd done all she could for her son and how much she loved her. And for the entire team at Keylu, it just blew our minds that we've made a difference. And so many people go through life without really making a difference. They exist and they have a lovely time and go on their holidays, but they don't make the difference. I want to save people from the pain I've been through. You know, I could, if it was 10 people, 100 people, 1,000,000 people, that's my mission. You know, to get people thinking ahead and actually to make you think, well, if this is going to happen to me, what can I do to make this easier for my loved ones? And I guess in life, that's something we all do, you know. We keep our children safe. We do all we can to make sure we provide a safe environment. And that's what I wanted to create. I wanted to give people a place where they can do something to help their loved ones.
So just as we transition to Keylu, I mean, from my perspective, to get beyond your worst day, you've got to forgive yourself, forgive others, forgive God, whoever we think's up there. When we talk about forgive, doesn't necessarily mean condone in the case of certainly other people. But we also talk a lot about using our pain for a purpose. And I've found in my own life, as obviously listeners are well aware, you know, losing a $2.25 billion, 150-year-old family company was devastating. My wife's American, so we've, you know, lived in the U.S. for 30 years. But when you are able to channel your pain into helping others, as we try and do here through my book and this podcast, it doesn't solve everything, but there's certain element of healing. As we transition to Keylu, just before we talk about the specifics of Keylu, talk about how what that has done and the path there has provided some level of healing of the understandable grief that you went through with your sister and mum.
Yeah, I kind of think you can end up hating a lot in life. You know, you hate God and you hate everything that's happened. But one of my favorite sayings as well is, like, hating somebody is like taking a poisonous tablet and expecting the other person to die. And this is something that it sticks in my head. Actually, there was a time me and my dad weren't getting on too well, and I was listening to this amazing interview on the radio, and it said, just if you're finding it difficult, release that hate now. Just say, I forgive you. And I did it instantly, and it made life easier. So by taking off all that resentment towards God and everything that had happened and saying, all right, it's almost like I did a Control-Alt-Delete on my life and said, let's go again. You know, you can't carry on feeling like this. You've got the opportunity to make a lot of difference. And for me, it just kind of like opened up my eyes to what I could achieve. And I was really blessed that the team I work with today all had been through the same kind of experience in their life, losing people they loved. And we just gelled. And it was bringing together a unity of like-minded people to in a little way, change the world.
So I do want to ask about Keylu now. Before I do, I just want to make an observation because I want listeners to really understand this. And let me throw out a thesis to you, if you will. If you had stayed in a point of anger, resentment at yourself, at God, maybe at your sister Jane for taking her own life. I mean, resentment tends to seep in all over the place, whether it's rational or not. If you'd, wallowed in a sea of very understandable resentment and grief, even if somebody had come and said, we need to find a place to keep records and memories and videos, how open do you think you would have been to new ideas if you were wallowing in grief and anger and hadn't made that choice? I got to move forward somehow. Would you have been even able to see the opportunity if you were wallowing in anger and grief and resentment?
No, and I think that to directly answer that is when we've lost somebody we love, and this really links into what we're doing, is while you're grieving something, you're not in the mindset to do anything. You are just feeling such loss that some people can't even get up for weeks and months at a time, not even step out the door. So for me, it was I always see the benefit of any situation. I always look for, it's never a failure, it's a lesson. And I think by doing so, that means you can just keep getting up again and again and again and dusting yourself off and saying, look, I might not have enjoyed that, but what have I learned from it? So I will always see the benefit in any single situation. I might not see it at the time, but when I get through the other side of it, I think, wow, I learned a lot from that. And I think that's what the grief of losing Jane and Mum taught me was we are all going to go through this at some point with somebody we love. And it's completely unavoidable. No matter how wealthy you are, at some point you're going to pass away. But what I want to do now is use my experience of actually what that feels like to help other people to try and mitigate some of that grief. I can't take away all of it, but even if I can just make that a little bit better, that's all I can do.
So, yeah, again, just to, hit this nail on the head one more time, I think really what we're saying here is, for you to really create a legacy that you and others would be proud of, a life that you and others would be proud of, you've got to make a choice to let go of the anger, the grief. Doesn't mean you don't honor the people that you loved, but, wallowing is certainly not what your mom and sister would have wanted you to do. They wouldn't have wanted you to spend your life grieving and wallowing. It would have saddened them deeply if you just given up on life. And I think that's true for most people. So, opportunities will come, but the question is, are you going to be ready to take advantage of them? Well, Ian Dibb was, as we'll hear. But he made a choice that I'm not going to wallow, I'm going to move forward.
And I'm going to pull out a hammer, Ian, because Warwick said he was going to hammer the point home. This is something you said to me when we talked before the Zoom was Zooming a couple of weeks ago. And you said this about the experience and where we're at in this conversation. You said, I either have to do something about this, the trauma that you'd been through, or I'll get sucked into a black hole. That was the stakes that you wrapped around the decision you had to make. And I think that speaks to Warwick's point about, there's that fork in the road. You can go down one way that leads to further devastation in different ways, or you can go the other way, which not only brings hope and healing to yourself, but as you've done with Keylu, offers that hope and healing to others.
Absolutely. It is a decision. You have to make that decision physically. It won't happen on itself. You need to say, okay, today's the day I'm going to do something different. Today's the day I'm going to make a difference. And once you start on that path, it's just believing in yourself 100%.
So let's talk about Keylu. So how did that happen? I mean, it's a magnificent concept, as we'll hear, but what were you doing at the time professionally? What was life like? And what were those strands that led to Keylu happening?
So after Mum passed away, I was working for a print company running their digital studio. And it was a simple job. It didn't take too much mind power, which is what I needed after losing Mum. And I remember sitting around my sister's house one evening, and it just came into my head, actually, why don't people plan for this? And it was, and so I sat around with the family and said, look, guys, if I built this, would you use it? And it was 100%, yeah, absolutely. This would have made our life so much easier with Mum and with Jane. So then I asked a few more people and said, look, if I built this platform, would you use it? And back then it wasn't Keylu. We were called Once I've Gone. So what happens once I've gone? What happens to your information once I've gone? And so Once I've Gone came from a simple conversation. So, and then he just checked it with dozens and dozens of people saying, if I built this platform, would you use it? And so we built a very early stage platform way before people were using technology as they are today. It was too early. So we parked it for a few years, and then technology has since caught up. And as a result of that, we rebranded as Keylu, and we wanted to not really just focus on end of life planning. You know, it's no matter, even though we know we're all mortal and there will be a time we're not here, actually, we should be managing our lives on a day-to-day basis. So really, Keylu moved into the place where it's not focusing on planning for death, it's managing your life. And then if something happens, it's easier for your loved ones. So very much it's been a journey from initial sat around a table with a family to where we are today, Warwick.
And I think from what you've said before, there's a need for this, but it's personal. Because talk a bit about how it's not a judgment, but everything wasn't tied up in this neat bow with papers and memories and photo albums and videos. And there wasn't a Keylu back when your mom and Jane died. But talk about how this is personal, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but to a degree, you don't want other people to go through what you went through. So just help the listener understand why this isn't just a business. It's very personal for you.
Oh, hugely. So Jane, as I said, Jane was 28 when she passed away. She was a teacher. She had documents here, there, and everywhere. Mum, 57, GP, 2 or 3 filing cabinets full of data. Some of it was live, some of it wasn't. And it really was a traumatic 16 months in my life trying to organize the estate administration and probate. Very difficult, especially when you're not prepared for it. But then the emotional side comes in, that you've no longer got any opportunity to speak to that person. And I deeply miss hearing my mum's voice. So it's been 16 years with Jane, 18 years with Mum. And what would I give for one soundbite from each of those people for me? You know, that would be far more valuable than all the different assets they own. And off the back of that, it's you start to realize that we spend a huge amount of time on our phones. You know, we capture photos and videos, but how often do we turn the camera around and capture a moment with somebody? And so one of the things we love to do is I taught my daughter Alice to ride a bike. And as she rode off across the field, I turned the camera around on myself and said, Alice, it's your dad. And you've just learned to ride your bike, and you've no idea how proud I am of you and how much I love you. And I store that in Keylu because that is a unique moment in my child's life. And that is what I wanted from my mum and my sister, that type of knowledge that there might be a point they weren't in my life, but they'd planned for that. And so the emotional side, that when somebody passes away, there's a lovely saying that when an old person dies, a library burns to the ground, because all that knowledge that person contained is gone. And what we want to do with Keylu is actually help you to curate your own legacy. So recording messages, moments, favorite times, songs you and your family love together. So if something was to happen, it's all passed on to them. And you've basically done all you can to make sure that person has still got this unique link to somebody they loved.
Yeah, I just want to mention something just occurred to me. Obviously Keylu didn't exist when my dad died in early 87, or beyond. But because my family was pretty prominent, and most families are not in terms of wealth and status, a fair amount is known about them. So my great-great-grandfather, came out from England to Australia in the late 1830s, founded the whole John Fairfax Limited media empire. Because he was prominent back in the early 40s, when there were still folks that maybe had some memory of him when they were small, they wrote this loving portrait of him for the family. He died in the 1870s, so I have that book. I can't tell you how many times I've read it, how much that means to me. Now, most families don't have a book about their great-great-grandfather. We're talking 5 generations ago, like zero. Nobody has, I mean, maybe if you're, I don't know what, the Duke of Marlborough or some prominent, English aristocrat, maybe you do, but for average person, they don't. But, he was a person of very strong faith, an elder at his church, and so reading that, it means everything to me. When I came to faith in Christ at St. Aldate's in Oxford, I felt like this is part of our heritage. But, it means everything to have that. And there are some letters that, my grandfather wrote, and a couple of letters that my dad wrote me. Those are precious treasures, but most people don't have that. And so talk about with Keylu, obviously how long ago did you start Keylu?
So we originally started Keylu the concept was 2009, but as we mentioned, it was just too early. So in 2019, we relaunched and we put a bigger team behind it. And we actually said, okay, this is the time, we are now all using mobiles every single day. They've become a huge part of our life. Everything is now digital. So when you buy life insurance, car insurance, house insurance, you don't get them sent to you anymore. They're actually either emailed to you or you're given access to an online portal. But how many portals do you have to manage? The average person has about 80 to 100 passwords they need to manage just to manage their lives. And one of the big downsides of this amazing digital change is that all of a sudden, if you're not there to actually link into those portals, that information is lost or extremely hard to find. There's a statistic in the UK that 25% of cohabiting couples are completely in the dark over their partner's financial situation. And in the UK, there is around 200 billion in unclaimed assets. So bank accounts, savings accounts, pension portfolios. And it's only going to get worse. So it really is that when we first came up with the idea, you still get your bank account details or your monthly letters sent out to you. That doesn't happen anymore. So all of a sudden, we're going to build this knowledge gap that when somebody passes away, how are they supposed to find that information? You spent a fortune on your pension, but if your family don't know where that is, it's going to go unclaimed.
Yeah. So with Keylu, I mean, talk about how that's different than maybe there are other financial institutions, estate planning folks. How is this different than what some people do?
So there are people out there that say, well, I've got a spreadsheet on my computer, or I've got some stuff in a Dropbox account. But what Keylu is, it's a very guided process. So from signing up to making sure all of your documents are in one place, everything is kept up to date. You've got the latest bank account, you've got the latest will, you've got your life insurance. It actually gives you a process from being one, completely unorganized to two, knowing that everything is completely organized and up to date. So if something was to happen to you, it's really easy for your family to manage the probate, giving them time to grieve and also saving them a huge amount of money that they would be spending on specialists in this area. But also, whereas you look at Dropbox as an opportunity just to store documents, Keylu actually gives you the opportunity to curate your own legacy, leaving behind an incredible messages, memories, photos, videos, family recipes. It's all about you creating a gift for somebody else. And I think that's what this is. It's the last, most precious gift you can ever pass on.
Wow. So just talk about the peace of mind that having all those records and memories in one place gives, because it sounds like you went through, 16 months, what you said, of probate. Talk about how, just that legacy that you can give to your loved ones by having all this organized.
Yeah, if you were to sit down with your family and say, look, okay, where are all my documents? Most people wouldn't have the clue where to start. And that's basically what you're doing by not planning. So the peace of mind is that with a click of a button, trusted contacts in your Keylu account can instantly download every single document they need to deal with the probate process. And that is with a touch of a button, they can then pass it on to a professional that says, here's everything my dad had from his pensions, to his savings, to his investments, to his share certificates. It's all here. And then all of a sudden you can then pass on, and the process of probate will be far quicker, far less painless. And my mother-in-law is going through this at the moment here in the UK. And I think they're 16, 18 months in on a simple one-bedroom flat in London with a savings account. It doesn't need to be this complicated. The reason it is this complicated, it takes months and months and months to find missing or lost assets. So by planning ahead and making sure everything is kept up to date, it just means that process is far easier for your loved ones. And at the same point, they can just get on dealing with the grief, which will come, but this will make it easier.
One of the things I love about what you've been saying, Ian, is that you've referred a couple times to how these devices, these mobile devices, everybody has them. And I think we all feel sometimes, even though we're all really using them and into them, I'll raise my hand, I'm into them myself. But what you've done in a very real way is redeem them a bit from the perception that they're time wasters, from the perception that they're distractors, from what we've all seen in restaurants when you sit down and you look over at the table next to you and people aren't talking, they're looking at their phones. You've redeemed that idea of taking that phone to create a document, to create memories, to create a legacy for your family. And you said earlier that there's a saying that when an older person dies, it's like a library burns to the ground. What I love about what you're doing with Keylu is that the legacy you're leaving is you're using technology to, when someone dies, their loved ones inherit a library. They get a library full of both that financial legacy, which is so important, but as you indicated, even more important, more emotional, more meaningful is that emotional legacy that is able to be passed along. And that's a great 1-2 punch, and it's really important here at Beyond the Crucible, because Warwick talks all the time about living. The reason you live a life on purpose dedicated to serving others is that it helps you leave a legacy to be proud of. And that's one of the things that Keylu allows folks to do. Before I let Warwick ask the next question, though, I don't think that you've defined for everyone who's not Cornish what Keylu means and why you named it that.
Yes, so we wanted a name which embraces family and protection. So the Cornish name for family is Keylu, Teylu. And the K comes from keep, or your key information. So we combine the two words. So basically, it's where you keep all the information for your family. And miraculously, all the domain names are available as well. So it's an absolute blessing.
Indeed.
Oh, that's great. So, yeah, I love this concept of obviously keeping all the documents in one place, but just keeping memories. You know, it's so important, I think, of just, your story. And as you share about your mom and Jane, I'm guessing if you founded this company in 2019, 100 years from then, let's say it's 2119, without this, how would your great grandkids, how would they know anything about your beloved sister and mother? They probably wouldn't, unless there was a book written about them or whatever. Their memory would pass. But I'm sure you've probably recorded a bunch of videos and writings and other material, I'm guessing, about your mom and sister, and certainly about yourself and your wife and kids, daughter. Those memories will be preserved. So I know obviously it's early days in one sense, but imagine in 100 years the legacy that your ancestors will have that you don't probably have from your ancestors 100 years ago. I mean, does that make sense? I mean, you're giving a legacy and a gift that, your mother's memory will not be lost. Your ancestors, hopefully for hundreds of years, will remember the incredible person she was and your sister. That's a legacy worth preserving.
Well, one of the things that still hurts is I remember sat there with mum in hospital on the night she was diagnosed with cancer. And she turned to me and she said, "I'm never going to see your kids grow up." That still hurts. I can still, it's as fresh as it was all those years ago. But what we could have done if we had Keylu back then, she could have recorded some messages about who she was, and we could then play them through the future generations. My mum had a wicked personality; she really did. And there's some stories that when I retell them, it brings her back to life. There's some key things she did, which to most people would mean anything, but to me mean the world. So I think what we're trying to do with Keylu is you might not record every single moment, but just capture some key memories, because we've all got our own unique personalities. I like to be quite sarcastic with my daughter. And as a result, my daughter is super sharp. And some of the things she writes down, I will actually just put down on a piece of paper and say, Alice, tonight you said this. And it might not mean anything to her now, but in the future, it will mean the world to her. And I've got all these, I've just had to clear up in the office, actually. I've got probably 100 hand-drawn pictures from when Alice was 1 right through to now. And we can't keep everything, you can't keep, because otherwise your fridge will just collapse under the weight of hand-drawn paintings and the magnets won't allow the fridge to work anymore. But what you can do is actually grab a photo of that, put it into Keylu and put the time and date next to it and say, Alice, this was when you were 1. And then you've got a video of the kids on a first day at school, the graduation, the wedding. You can start capturing key moments in a person's life. Otherwise, those key moments just disappear. And all of a sudden, 10 years is blurred into 20 years, blurred into 30. And you realize that actually you haven't captured a lot of stuff. You've got all these photos on your phone, but you won't be in any of them because you're taking the photos. Or the person on the other side of it's taking the photos of you, but there aren't any moments of you as a whole. So what I do quite often is I'll turn the camera around, grab a moment with me and my daughter, because it's so important you capture that one moment in time. And to me, that's one of the things I do. And I don't know many other people that do. Actually, instead of take a photo, grab a moment, capture that key moment in time, record it, add it to Keylu, so that you can enjoy it now with your family. But in the future, that gift will be the most precious thing you can leave behind.
Hmm. So do you talk about this to folks that are thinking of using Keylu? How do you use Keylu? How do you create a legacy? What are the kinds of things you should capture?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of stuff we're going to continue to add to the platform.
Yeah.
Like here's a user guide, and here's how to add a video. Here's how to add a message. Here's what people are adding to their bucket lists. And most people want to see the Northern Lights or see the Grand Canyon, for instance. We can provide you with some prompts and some best uses of the platform. But loads of people go to it just explore it in different ways, really. But it's all about the mobile app makes it even easier. So you're walking along, you've captured an amazing picture, and you go, now that was a moment I want to record and store forever. So it's all about actually it's a really easy to use platform, but how can we make it even better? Which is what the team continues to do.
And one of the interesting things about it that you mentioned to me, Ian, is that yes, there are direct-to-consumer transactions where people will get this for themselves to leave a legacy to their family, but you also work with some professionals like estate planners and lawyers who have leveraged this to offer their clients, right? I mean, there's a B2B kind of application as well, isn't there?
Yeah, so we work with financial advisors, solicitors, estate planners, mortgage brokers. We work with charities. We offer Keylu completely free of charge to anyone who's being diagnosed with a terminal illness. So we work with organizations to provide. That's something we've always been a key part of who we are. We want to make sure we're constantly giving back. But yeah, we work with all these different organizations to provide a benefit, not only to them, but also to their clients, helping their clients to understand the importance of estate planning, getting their affairs in order. And I think one of the key things is it's a great way to keep up to date on all your financial situation. So make sure everything's kept up to date, because it's quite easy to have your will written and forget about it for the next 20 years, realizing you've had another kid and bought another property. So I think what Keylu does, it provides regular notifications and updates to say, hey, Gary, it's been 6 months since you added your will. Has anything changed? Or it's been 12 months since you added your insurance policy. Is this the latest one? So it's actually keeping you up to date on everything in your life. It's like a life management, life planning tool, as much as it is that kind of legacy creation tool.
That's incredible. So talk about some of the feedback you've received from KLU users, because I'm sure you've received a lot of feedback. So what are people saying and how are they using it? What impact has it had on their lives?
So, unfortunately, a lot of the people who come to us say, I wish I'd have seen this 6 months ago or 12 months ago, because I've just gone through this with mum or dad, and I've not got a clue where to start. You know, it's that kind of situation. You have to normally have a trigger point go off in your life, which makes you understand you're mortal. And that might be you've just lost somebody you love, you've just been given a terminal diagnosis, you've just potentially bought a house. So there's lots of triggers in your life that make you understand the importance of getting your affairs in order. But the overwhelming response we get from a Keylu user is, I've got peace of mind knowing I've done all I can for my loved ones. And of course, all the information on our platform is completely encrypted. You know, no one within the Keylu team has access to it. The only person that will ever see that information is you as the account holder, and those trusted contacts you've added to access it after you've gone. So I think the key thing is actually this is brilliant, because I can deal with my affairs now, knowing that I've done something incredible for my loved ones. And it's just the ability actually to know those people will receive that message in the future. So I'm just going to have a look behind me now and see where I've put it. I've got a cassette tape here, which my mum left for me. Let me just see if I can pick it up.
For you younger listeners, a cassette tape is the way that we used to record things before our phones did it all for us.
but here we go. This came before CD players and MP3 players. This is a cassette tape. And on this cassette tape, it says Anne, Radio Cornwall. So my daughter came into the room and she said, Dad, what's this? And luckily she didn't break it. But on it is the only recording I've got of my mum's voice. And it's unbelievable, because my mum hadn't planned this. My daughter found it in my mum's box of like my memory box. That's the most valuable thing I now own above anything else. My mum's voice on that cassette. So what we've done is taken that forward, because you don't need to use a cassette tape. Keylu allows you to store all of this information. You could be walking along and something amazing happens. You open up the Keylu app, you record that message for somebody you love. Click save, click who it's going to go to, knowing that you have the peace of mind. The recipient is going to get that heartfelt message at some point in the future where it'll be the most valuable item they ever receive from you.
And I want listeners to really understand how important that is. And again, I just go back to my great-great-grandfather, John Fairfax. I mean, your daughter in the coming decade, she is going to remember you well. She's going to have, you know, yes, you've got the videos, but she will have memories. But, you know, let's assume that she gets married one day and has kids, and they have kids. There's going to come a generation that never met Ian Dibb.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that, you know, you will have died before they were born, maybe decades before they were born. And they're going to say, Mom, Dad, you know, I've heard of my grandfather, great-great-grandfather, Ian. What was he like? And it's like, you know, I don't really know. I was 4 when he died. I don't really remember him. I'm sorry. Well, they won't need to say, I'm sorry. They'll be able to say, well, here, you know, he's a pretty amazing guy. Here he is, you know, here he is with your grandmother, Alice, you know, and your great-grandfather is helping your grandmother learn how to ride a bike. Now, how cool is that? And it's hard for people to imagine, but, you know, that will happen. This is a gift that generations of your family and generations of other families will have. Does that, I mean, help people understand, I know this, maybe it's obvious, but why that's important, and why for most of us, we just do not have that in any way, shape or form.
I think you only realize the importance of it when you can't access it anymore. So for me, that I knew where my mum grew up in Bristol. I knew, and so I did a little tour on Google Maps a few weeks ago, and I found the street my mum grew up in, and I zoomed in with a little orange man, and instantly that looking at that house brought back hundreds of memories and moments that you know they're somewhere, but you need some trigger to kick them off. And unfortunately, I can't access any further because I've got that line of my family's life is gone. So I want to make sure that there's photos. I every now and again I walk around the house and I do a full video of the house knowing that Alice, when she's older, can go back into a house, follow that video and see the rooms I've set up at Christmas, because I want to make sure that information is passed on. So as you said, that when I'm 96 and Alice has got kids and I've got grandkids and all that type of stuff, they can actually see that I wasn't always this 96-year-old. I traveled the world and I was just like they are, because I kind of think that if you look at it now, when we're looking at our grandparents, the photos of them are black and white, and there's no videos of them. And actually, it's very hard to associate yourself with something that looks so far away from you. But actually, if you look at people doing what they've just done with like these, like the World War II, they've recolored it. And it makes it actually far more real now it's in color. We can provide something incredible for our loved ones by providing dozens and dozens of videos, and you can upload as many as you want to the platform, knowing that these are actually key moments that at the moment might seem quite silly. So I've got a video of myself and my daughter play fighting. And I turn the camera around because she loves to play fight, my little girl. And it's just a really special thing that when she looks back and she's 60, she can go, this is your granddad and me having a play fight. And that would just be so special that we're just trying to say, actually, just capture everything. It's not just when we used to have film cameras and the camera would come out at a special occasion. We now have these unique tools in our pockets that can capture videos whenever we want it. But what we do with those, how are we using those to curate a legacy? At the moment, they go into the iCloud account, and that's where we remain locked behind passwords and unavailable to anyone else. Keylu gives you the unique opportunity to curate that into a story for your loved ones, for now, for them, forever, really.
Yeah.
I want to do a couple things here, listener, before Warwick asks what I'm sure is going to be a very good question. First of all, I want to say that sound you heard is the captain turning on the fasten seatbelt sign, which indicates we've begun our descent of this episode, but we're not there yet. So you still got time to enjoy the flight. I wanted to add a personal story that emphasizes exactly what you're talking about here, Ian, because I got a cassette tape too. After my mom passed away. My mom passed away more than 30 years ago. And late in her life, when she was married to my stepfather, my mom always liked to sing, and she never got to do it when she was married to my dad. Well, my stepfather was an organist who played all around the region where we live, where I have moved back to in the last 6 years. So my mom would go out and sing with him at these places. And they would, in the garage, I remember, and it was embarrassing when I was like 17, because my mom would be in the garage with my stepdad and his organ, and they would be playing and singing, and my friends would be like, what is that? But they recorded cassettes that they sold, and when she passed away, one of them found its way to me. I then put it on my, I digitally burned it. I have it on my phone, but where that paid off, when I got remarried in 2017, my mom obviously could not be at my wedding, but she was, because I did a daddy-daughter dance with my stepdaughter to a song of my mom singing from that album. And that I can't hardly talk about that moment now without getting emotional about it. And that's the power of what you're talking about. Those memories that move from memory to reality that you can then bring into life as you move forward. That's a precious gift that you can pass along to your loved ones, for sure. Warwick, sorry I interrupted you there a little while ago.
No, that was such a great point. So just as we close, a couple of different thoughts. I mean, one thought I have, I guess, before I ask a question is, because my family, the Fairfax family in Sydney, were very prominent, we have more memories than most families. Prominent families seem to want to capture themselves for whatever reason. So, as I said, we've had a book written about my great-great-grandfather. There are letters. When we sold the house I grew up in, which my dad was born in and died in, back in the day when you actually were born at home, not in the hospital, there were all of these photographs going back to maybe the 1850s. And I looked, there was some from the early 1900s, 1920s. obviously I knew some of them. I recognized my dad and others. He was in his late 50s when I was born. But there was a host of people around him, and I'm thinking, I have no idea who these people are. Because we're talking about 1890s, 1910 or something. And I felt this sadness. I wish, now some of them were family, some of them were friends. Who were they? What were their stories? And even in my family, where we have more photographs and memories than most, there was this sadness. So what you're doing with Keylu is preventing that kind of sadness. Who were the family and close friends that really, as we close, I mean, you've moved on at least as best as you can from the grief of losing your beloved sister and mother. Talk about how what you do with Keylu and your life, I'm assuming there's some redemptive quality about what you do. I mean, obviously your business is successful, it's well thought out, but just talk about maybe the sense, if that's true, of redemption, hope that what you do now brings to you.
It's everything, the saying that if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. It couldn't be truer. That we work with some amazing people, some amazing companies, not only in the UK, but the opportunity to work with people around the world. That you actually see different people at different stages in their journey as well. Now, if you look at where you are on a journey and you compare yourself to somebody who's never experienced it, you're obviously dealing with grief still. But then you look at people at the start of it who don't even know how to get out of bed because they've just lost somebody they love and they've no idea what to do. And from everything I do with Keylu, I believe that we should be the light in somebody's life, and we should look back and lift people up and bring people with us. And everything we're doing at Keylu, we're doing that, but we do it on a kind of world stage as well, to say it doesn't have to be this bad. It can be easier. And actually, by just making little steps each and every day, Keylu doesn't have to be completed in one day. It's a journey. You can get to it over time. But for me, the experience of losing Mum and Jane was a catalyst in my life to say, okay, now step up and make a difference. Be the person who's going to change people's lives. Don't expect it to be done for you. And that's something that I absolutely love at Keylu is I have an opportunity, and the team all share my passion and vision. We want to make a difference. We want to help people. And if people are struggling, actually look towards us, because we've been there. We use the saying quite a lot, we care, we've been there. And that echoes through everything we do at Keylu. We've been to where you've been, and we've been through it, and we are continuing to grow. And I always think that don't always look ahead of you, look where you've actually been. And sometimes look around and you might think, actually, I'm judging myself against people who are out there partying and drinking and look super happy. But look around the other way sometimes, and there's people who are worse off than you that actually you can step out and help them to get to where you are. So for me, it's very much a journey we're on. And I'm just really blessed to have had 28 years with Mum and Jane. That's far longer than some people have had. But from that, to be given a life mission to help others, I think it's actually been a blessing.
I have been in the communications business long enough, and you've heard me say this before, listener, pretty much on every episode, that I know when the last word has been spoken on a subject. And normally I would say our guest has spoken it. However, I'm also in the communication business long enough to know when I've messed up and did not get, because I was so emotional in my last comment that I did not give our guest, Ian Dibb, the chance to let you know how you can find out about Keylu online. Ian, how can people, you mentioned that domain names were easy to find. How can they go to one of those domain names and learn more about and even sign up for Keylu?
So you can find us directly at keylu.com, which is KEYLU.com. You can find us at Facebook /Keylu Life. You can also find us on LinkedIn as well. But yeah, we are easy to find. Please log on to the platform. Let us know what you love about it, what you don't like. We're on a journey.
And that is the last word of our episode today, listener. So until the next time that we're together, do remember that we understand crucible experiences are inordinately difficult. Ian described one here today, a couple of here today for himself, and then also some crucibles that other people go through that he's worked with. They're painful. They knock you off your feet. They change the trajectory of your life. But they do not have to be the end of your story. In fact, if you learn the lessons from those crucibles and you apply them to your life moving forward, they can be the start of a new chapter, a new story in your life. And that story can be the best story of your life. Ian's just revealed it in what he's talked about here. Warwick talks about it every week in his own life. Because that new story, that new direction leads to a truly worthwhile, hope-filled future. And that is a life of significance.